Welcome to PowerUp podcast, the podcast that seeks to empower and dismantle, giving us the power and confidence to question, deconstruct, rebuild, and expand in life. I'm your host, Amma Rouge, voiceover and multidisciplinary artist, wellbeing advocate, food and book geek with over 14 years of movement-centered experience.
I am your host, Mesma, artist, choreographer, yogi and coach with a passion for alchemy, creativity, transformation and workplace wellness.
We recognise that we can't dismantle and empower or be empowered without first learning ourselves, diving deeper to unlearn the harmful, restrictive and unprogressive. It's an ongoing practice and journey for us all, which is why we created this podcast.
Our show features guests doing the work to enlighten, deconstruct and power up in their own magical ways.
We're going to be having conversations around the power of healing, transformation, well-being and creativity, and how they feed our personal and collective evolution, how they help us power up.
We have the amazing Anastasia Ttofis in the house. Welcome, Anastasia. It's such a joy to have you here.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Anastasia, pronouns she, her, is the founder of the BusyBuddha Retreats, solicitor, director, and multi-business owner. Anastasia has over 7 years' experience in the legal industry and has most recently started her own law firm, Isla. She has substantive experience acting on high-profile litigious banking claims and advising on complex banking facilities and security documents. She's also a company director and co-owner of a specialist finance broker and a local networking company. Wow! Despite having a very busy and demanding working and personal life, Anastasia is able to live a life full of gratitude and serenity. After being introduced to yoga, meditation, and mindfulness, she saw firsthand the benefits it had on her ability to navigate a high-pressure career with more clarity and focus, as well as ensuring that her own well-being is properly cared for. And so, Anastasia created BusyBuddha Retreats, which I have had the absolute joy of facilitating on, and I can tell you all they are wonderful. Anastasia created these retreats in order to bring what she had learned to other professionals and help them achieve more balance, focus, and longevity in their careers and live a more fulfilled and happier life. Wow, big ups to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Right. And there's more to that story as well, Anastasia. So I would love for you to share the story behind creating BusyBuddha, if that's okay.
Sure. So I think the starting place, really, the headline, spoiler alert, is at the time I was suffering with panic attacks. So just jumping straight to the chase, cutting to the chase even. That's where I got to, suffering with panic attacks, not really coping, so to speak, whatever you want to say coping is. But I didn't know I wasn't coping, by the way. I can say that with hindsight, because hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I didn't know it at the time. And I would never have admitted it. That's kind of how it came about. But rewinding, I guess, a few steps before that, it happened off the back of a number of, I think, what I'd say like quite pivotal events that led to this realization of like I needed to create this. And I think you can rewind it kind of as far back as childhood. Like a lot of people don't realize, and I definitely didn't realize the impact what relatively small events through your childhood can have on you as an adult. You just don't correlate it. It sounds like almost like now it sounds like a silly thing to say, like of course it would, but I didn't know, so I bet there's many other people who didn't. So I had a lovely childhood. There's no issues. That's not necessarily why somebody then suffers with any difficulties. They're not necessarily correlated. But how I was raised was very much that very proud family, very motivated. I was very determined. I always wanted to be a lawyer. So growing up, I remember writing this little story at school, and I was 8 years old, and I've got this piece of paper. Like, I'd show it to you if I could, and it says, I want to be a lawyer when I grow up because I want to help people, and I also want to have a red car with sliding doors. I think I was talking about. I think I was talking about a Lamborghini. I don't have one of them. For those of you who can't see this because the voice recording, I'm actually sat in my T4 camper van. So I don't have a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or anything, but I do help people. So I like to think I do. So yeah, it was a dream I'd always had. My dad and my mum, very supportive parents, and always said to me, you know, you're a Ttofis, you can do this. That's our surname. You know, it's like a mantra we lived by. You know, you're a tough, my girl, you can do this. And I loved it. You know, I lived and died by it. You know, that's how we were, and it was fantastic. And I'm so grateful for that. But when you start then accumulating all these little bits along the way, you then realize why certain things manifested in the way they do. So that sounds like a happy childhood, and it was all great. When I started then training as a lawyer, you know, you go from you know, one success to another in some way. So that I'm very grateful for. Again, kind of jumping forward, when I had hypnotherapy, spoiler alert again, one thing my hypnotherapist asked me was, are you happy? And I said, yeah, well, I'm grateful and I have a fortunate life. So that's not why I asked you. I asked you, are you happy? I said, well, I've had a very fortunate life. You know, I'm lucky and I'm grateful. And you know, what have I got to moan about? Because you know, when you look at it from the outside, well, you were doing well. You were a lawyer. Everything you achieved was a success of some sort. But I couldn't. He was like, that's not why I asked you. You're giving a politician's answer to that. I asked you if you were happy, and I couldn't answer it at the time. So yeah, you know, you go along and you're trained to be a lawyer, and there's, you know, you did well at school, all A stars, fantastic. You did well at uni, well, that's great, and then you qualify as a lawyer, and you're constantly kind of driving forward for more. And then you've got this family kind of mantra in the background where they're very supportive parents, but you know, you're a Ttofis, you can do anything you put your mind to. So you're creating this person who is so determined and successful, and you're probably saying, well, or wanting to be successful, because I mean, what even is that? That's a whole other topic. So you're thinking, well, what's the problem in that? There's no, you know, it's a good quality to have maybe, which is fine, yes, but you then create somebody who, there's kind of two main things you can be driven to in life. I think we talk about on the Busy Buddha, and we call it, you know, you as humans, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And it's not your fault because it's in evolution to be driven towards pleasures. That's why we procreate. So we're driven towards things like that. So you're driven towards money, fast cars, things that actually the next biggest kick. So I was constantly booking holidays, doing and it's not that I had the money to do it, by the way. So massively caveat that I didn't, which also caused problems in itself. But we call it like destination syndrome. So you're constantly on this perpetual state of not being happy, but you're trying to fulfill that happiness by the next big thing. So, well, I'll get my law degree. Well, I'll be happy when I get that. Well, you're not still happy. You're still not happy. There's still something missing. What about when I get that car? I'll go and get an Audi TT on finance that I can't even afford. It was worth more than my salary that I was on. But you just do these things, or I was doing these things. This perpetual state of chasing the next big thing in the hope that will bring you happiness. And I can tell you it doesn't. And I obviously learned that through when it manifested in panic attacks. But yeah, you have this drive to keep achieving, and you get there, and it's not what you, the feeling you get is not what you thought it would be. And the other thing is your fight or flight mechanism. So that's driven out of fear. So again, it's not your fault, because it's your ancestors. Your fight or flight rises your cortisol levels, and they're always just really, really high. And you know, it was there so that if a lion came around the corner, you ran and you survived. So the Ttofis genes, my dad can say that because we're still alive, because our ancestors did the right thing. They had their fight or flight kick in. But on a daily basis, that mantra and that fight or flight is just not needed. So I'm driving around in my camper van, I'm not getting attacked by a saber-toothed tiger. You know, it's just not happening. So there's those two things that are coexisting. It's this drive for pleasure, this constant, which is evolutionary, this constant destination syndrome where you want to get somewhere. And then this fight or flight, which is my boss said this to me, and then your cortisol levels go through the roof because you're triggering a fight or flight mechanism. Again, I know all that by hindsight, by the way. I didn't know that at the time. If I did, I wouldn't be sat here and none of this would have happened. So it's not something that I just learned it since then. So I say all that with hindsight. I can reflect on why the Busy Buddha happened. Well, it was happening because of this along the way. Qualified as a lawyer, and you're working crazy hours. There's a lot of pressure. You can't. If I went into my trainee supervisor at the time and said, "Hey, this big to-do list isn't good for my mental health," I mean, I could be wrong. If they heard this, they might have said, "No, Anastasia, I would have said that's fine." I just don't believe they would have done, and that's not them fault. That's not them. I'm not discrediting them as a person. If their child maybe came to them and said it, they might have had a completely different approach to me saying it in a capacity as a lawyer. So it's not them, it's the industry. So if I had said, "Hey, actually, I'm just not coping with this. Do you think we could allocate this to somebody else?" It would have been like as I walked out of the room, kind of hand across the neck, like, she's out, I'm not having her as a solicitor anymore. She'll never cut it, there was a competition who'd stay in the office the longest. I'd be sat there like, I've done my work, but there was another trainee still there, so I'm not leaving, because if I leave, you're going to get offered the job. And that is, again, this a type of atmosphere it was. So you created this atmosphere where, okay, so let's kind of recap. You've got these people kind of driven on this perpetual state of wanting this new pleasure, new success, in the hope it'll bring them happiness. You've got this fight or flight mechanisms building up every day, with this cortisol levels going round and round, increasing, and nothing's being done to decrease them. And then this industry that makes that all 10 times worse than ever could have been, because we encourage very long working hours. We don't encourage showing weakness. And I say that, you can't see my hands because of podcast, but I kind of put that in the inverted kind of weakness thing. It's not a weakness at all. It's communication skills. It's actually good leadership to say, actually, do you know what? I can't be doing this today, or I haven't got the space to be offering this. Absolutely. But had I said that at the time, it would have been a big no. And then there's a drive to kind of keep making more money, to keep billing, again, I could speak for hours on the industry and what's kind of wrong with it. There's so many beautiful things about it, and there's so many incredible lawyers, but there's a lot wrong with the industry. So all of that compounded led to me having panic attacks. And when I started having them, I remember driving home from work and started having these panic attacks, and I just didn't tell anybody, because I didn't have panic attacks. That was for weak people. People with problems had panic attacks. I didn't have any problems. I had a good life. I was a lawyer. My family life was fine. My boyfriend was fine. So why am I having panic attacks? There's nothing for you to be panicked about. Get over it. It was kind of what was going on in my head. And I felt at the time that, again, only people who were weak or not coping had panic attacks. And I was neither of those things. And I didn't tell my other half, nothing. So, you're reacting to things in a way that they think, God, that's just a bit out of ordinary to react that way to that someone's comment. But he didn't know. People around you don't know. I didn't tell anybody. And then eventually I did. I remember sitting him down and saying, very, very fast I was speaking, just kind of rambling to get it out because it's a big embarrassment. I didn't want to talk about it. And I said, "Babe, just so you know, I'm having these panic attacks and it's not a big deal. Don't worry, I'm going to fix it." And to translate what I just said was, I said, "I'm having these panic attacks. I'm having these panic attacks. It's not a big deal. Don't you worry. I'm going to fix it." Well, what is that? How can I fix them? I can, but with help. And that's, again, a lawyer thing, right? Or a lot of business owners or professionals, we're trained fixers. So I never needed anybody else's help. I was there to help clients and family and friends. I was a fixer. So the thought of me saying, "I'm broken, can someone help me?" And it wasn't, again, I use that very much as a term I would have used then. Somebody who's having panic attacks is not broken, but that's how I felt at the time. I thought I couldn't say that. And he kind of looked at me again. This is through no fault of his own. Just like, okay, like, what do I even say to this? I don't have to help you because you don't tell me how to help you. I don't know what to do. And they just kept manifesting, getting worse and worse. And like multiple situations happened that were just very, very uncomfortable for me. And they're crippling. If you've never had them before, or any listeners listening and have had them before, they're paralyzing. and there's nothing you can do. When I used to happen, I used to think, come on, like, you're so much stronger than this. Get out of this. Like, stop what you're doing. Get out and walk and go talk to that person. Go downstairs and address this situation. And I just couldn't. And for someone who'd classified myself as very strong from a young age, having this family ethos and mantra, and kick ass all the time, getting all my law degree done and smashing out stuff, I was not a weak person. So I find that really hard. But yeah, I realized at that time, I didn't realize, it's something that's okay. What I realized was I needed help. So I still didn't accept that it was okay. I just didn't like how I was feeling. Which is when I went to have hypnotherapy. And at that hypnotherapy, I met someone called Paul Hill. He's another one of our beautiful facilitators at the Busy Buddha, alongside myself and Ella. And he changed my life. I call him the life changer. Call him God sometimes. If you believe in a higher being, it's Paul Hill. If you're listening to this,
we love you, Paul Hill.
Yeah. And he changed my life. Anyone who wants to know about hypnotherapy, you're welcome to kind of get in touch with me and talk to me about it. I'm conscious not to take up loads of time talking about how it works. But we essentially kind of tapped into the subconscious mind and allowed it to make those changes that it otherwise was like blockading, saying, no, you can't rewire those thoughts. It kind of fast tracked it for me personally. It gave me permission to change the way I saw things, permission to say, I don't care how lawyers see it, this is how now my mind sees it. And it gave me this newfound strength to just do it my way. And it made me feel so free, like a weight was lifted off my chest. There's lots of changes that came from that. But to answer your initial question of how did that create the Busy Buddha, well, after it and after all the changes it had for me, I stopped having panic attacks, by the way. But at the time, I didn't know that was going to be forever. Yeah, it was good. It was good. At the time, obviously, a few weeks later, I didn't know it was definitely going to work. And so I just remember calling Paul Hill. I was walking over the heath and was like, I have this vision of us stood in front of a room of people, and we are going to help change their lives too. We're going to stand up there together and we're going to teach them what you've taught me and everything else I'm going to learn along the way, and we're going to change their lives. And you can imagine the first time it did happen, I mean, I'm sort of holding back the tears now, but the first time it happened, I remember just driving to the retreat and just crying, like, this is happening. We're doing it. So yeah, that's how the Busy Buddha happened, the story of how we got there.
That's incredible. And how long was it from kind of the moment where you realize, okay, I'm no longer having panic attacks, and kind of conceptually having this seed and the first retreat happening?
God, very quick. So I mean, maybe a matter of weeks after the hypnotherapy, the feeling I felt, I knew I was different. I remember saying to Paul, I feel stronger than I've ever felt when I'm not trying to be strong. That was like the key thing for me. I was no longer trying to be strong. For all those years, I tried so hard to be strong and fearless, and it came out in panic attacks and actually the opposite of what I was trying to achieve. Whereas with this, I just knew I was so fearless and so strong. So I knew they weren't going to happen again. I just knew it, like, because I just felt this new thing where nothing could touch me, and I wasn't even trying. It just was. So yeah, I kind of went back up to Southampton where he was and spoke to him about it. We then, within maybe like a couple of weeks later, had the website running, and then maybe a few months, maybe like a year later, we had the first retreat. So bearing in mind that time, I then obviously started doing my meditation, the yoga, pulling together other experts, so Ella, and yeah, so maybe it was like a year period really that we then got it up and running.
Wow.
And by the way, sold out every single retreat.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It's amazing.
Massive props. Just that whole journey was such a journey, and of course I'm sure there's, you're still journeying, but that initial part of it was mammoth. And I think a lot of listeners are that alone I think is going to inspire a lot of listeners in terms of their personal journeys, and maybe areas of life that they feel they need to overcome, or dreams that they have that they want to create. Seeing you having gone from one moment to another, and how successful it's been, and how you feel, how differently you feel, and how differently your mindset and perspective is. I think that is a massive success.
Thank you.
You describe yourself, Anastasia, as being a square peg in a round hole. And I just wondered, how has that, well, firstly, why do you describe yourself like that? And how has that shaped how you move through the world?
Sure. So there's actually another story that kind of coincides with the Busy Buddha launch and where that saying came from. So without mentioning I won't mention any names and stuff, but when I decided I was going to create the Busy Buddha, I went to a law firm I was working with at the time, was like, hey, like, I've got this really good idea, I think, that this is something we can bring to the wellbeing space, mindfulness, a Busy Buddha, and you had to kind of sell it to them so they understood a benefit for them. So unfortunately how it works. So I said, it's even like a corporate wellbeing thing, and there's a business development opportunity. And the response I got was, Anastasia, like, we know you're great with people and like business development stuff, but like, we want bum on chair doing billable hours and recording, you recording your time and getting the job done. Well, I did get the job done. I never had work outstanding, but we need more billable hours. Okay, right. And Anastasia, I just think you're a bit of a square peg in a round hole, is where it came from. I didn't call myself that. I was called it.
Okay.
And then I've taken it on board and I'm running with it,
I love it.
Making it your superpower. I love it.
Yeah. And so, and again, all fairness to them, as far as lawyers go, they were really nice. Like, it wasn't actually like a them thing. It's just a profession thing. And they said, I'm trying to help you to work out, if you want to be in a corporate world like this, you're not going to be able to do it this way. And I thought, well, that's fine. And I just won't stay in the corporate world. And so I handed my notice in. So,
amazing.
So yeah, that was again kind of part of how it came about. So you can see that in the hypnotherapy, I kind of jumped from, I was having panic attacks to, I had this hypnotherapy and here's the Busy Buddha. There's these little things in between that kind of, from the hypnotherapy alone, just with this big catalyst, like it unleashed the hell that was Anastasia, So.
And I just love it. Like, the hell that is Anastasia is such a blessing. Like, if you see Anastasia's camper van, it's flipping amazing. And like, who else knows a lawyer that drives around in a camper van where you can make hot chocolate with fairy lights? It's so refreshing. And I think the same for your retreats. They're so refreshing because there's not this kind of fitting into, this is how you do a retreat and you have to be very spiritual. It's like, this is a whole real person with flaws and with beautiful things, and that sometimes meditates and that sometimes doesn't. And I just really, I think that's why your retreats sell out, because they're real. And we're not having to pretend to be somebody else.
Yeah, and actually it's a really good way of putting it, Ella, that when you actually put it maybe across everything I do, maybe everything I do is a bit square peggy and round holey, so that's just it. So that's, I think from that, obviously then I handed my notice in, and that was terrifying, by the way. I thought to myself, have I lost my mind? Like, I've had this hypnotherapy and all of a sudden I'm jacking in my job that I've worked 20, how many years for at that time. Everything that again had been a catalyst for those panic attacks, i.e. striving for success, wanting more, I was like, see ya, and just like handing my notice in. Your family around you going, what are you doing? Like, you lost your mind. And I just had to keep going with it, and just believe in myself, which is where the meditation, the mindfulness and the yoga really changed that for me. So if I wasn't doing that, I would have really, really struggled to find the freedom just to go, and so what? Like, if it is what it is, just give it a go. So I think I take that approach with now a lot of things. The kind of square peg in the round hole has helped me to just go, I can do it differently. Like you said, the retreats, the whole point is I stand up, then I say, I don't even meditate all the time. Sometimes I get it wrong. And then I get really like, then everything starts creeping back in. I said that the dragon thoughts of me being like, oh, you can't do this and you can do this. And the loud chatter, the chimp mind comes back. My chimp's firmly back on my shoulder. But then I just start meditating again. So I'm not perfect. None of us are. So when you have yoga retreats and mindfulness retreats, a lot of the time, unfortunately, I felt you are made to feel a bit inferior to the spiritual guru that's in front of you. So, and that's not, I don't think that's helpful to anyone on that retreat or that experience, because it just makes them feel inadequate. And maybe how I felt in the legal profession. Again, with our law firm that we've just set up, there's no other law firm in the UK that does what we do. Now, that's either because I'm barking mad and there's a reason why they don't do it, or it's an absolutely awesome idea and everyone else has missed the boat. So who knows?
I think it's that one. I think it's the latter.
Yeah. Well, that's what I tell myself, So yeah, that's it.
So Anastasia, going back to kind of the before and after that, before the hypnotherapy, actually your nervous system was in that state of panic, in that state of fight or flight. And the real change now is that, I hang around with you often, and you are like, you've got so much energy, you've got so much compassion, you've got so much excitement for life and joy for life. How did you do it? And how can other people do that too?
Sure. So yeah, I think it's good to ask that, because I've said, hey, this is the problem. I had a bit of hypnotherapy and now look at me. I don't think there's like a missing out, maybe the bit in between, which is, so how do you do it? I mean, well, what do you even do then? Okay, so the meditation, the yoga and the mindfulness is crucial to it. So like you said, with the nervous system, I am no expert on this at all. I don't have a scientific degree, or I'm not an accredited mindfulness coach, but I do it daily, which I think makes you sometimes more of an expert because you practice it, right? So I see it day in, day out. So the meditation is essentially slowing down your breathing. So that's what it does. So when I speak slower and I'm more in control. So if I was panicked about something, everybody notices. You might think about standing up in front of the crowd. Your heart rate goes up. Your breathing speeds up. You find it hard to talk and hard to swallow. That's just all your nervous system coming out of sorts. It just doesn't, it's reacting to the situation in front of you with fight, flight, panic, whatever you want to call it. And so your meditation is teaching your breath work just to slow down and to rewire your almost immediate reaction to something. So say if something annoys me, again, I don't not get annoyed about stuff. I get annoyed as much as the next guy, but I choose how to react to it. So before something annoyed me, i.e. an attack on me, your fight or flight kicks in and this breathing goes through the roof. You're no longer in control of how you are reacting. So you've got different parts in your brain that will go to the default reaction. So your subconscious will kick in, which is why sometimes it's really beneficial. If a baby was about to get hit by a bus, your subconscious knows what to do, or there's a part of your brain that knows how to kick in and save that child. You don't have time to breathe, think and meditate about it. But there's other things that, your partner says something that makes get you back up a bit. You do not need to lose your mind about it. You don't need to do that. You don't need to go mental about it. There's other things you can do, i.e. slow your breath rate down. And also, if you are already meditating and practicing mindfulness, yoga. So yoga, again, isn't the moves and the positions, everyone looks like a pretzel. That's a modern day thing. Actually, previously, yoga was just about your breath work. So you'd sit and kind of breathe. All these asanas, all the positions, are kind of we've introduced in modern day society. So again, we're just relating back to your nervous system and your breath work. So yeah, in the scenario where your partner or your boss says something to you that you don't like, if you've lowered your cortisol levels and you have lowered or you're able to take less breaths, so the less breaths you take, it just makes you more calm, then you naturally are just going to react differently. So again, a panic attack, if you think about anyone who's seen it or experienced it themselves, you can't catch your breath, right? It's what it feels like. Well, it's because your nervous system's gone all out of place. So meditation helps with that. Things like mindfulness are just being in the present moment. So again, my panic attacks were triggered by like anxiety for the future, and like thinking about the past. So I never lived in the moment. So again, I kind of talk about this for hours, but kind of trying to relate it to the nervous system is meditation. Mindfulness will ground you in the present moment. So it's about being in the present without any judgment. So not worrying about the future and not thinking about the past. But those are, again, things that will help your nervous system just to focus on what it's doing at any one given time and not trigger anxiety-related responses to, again, thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow or wondering. You must have heard that saying where it's like 99% of the things that we actually wonder are going to happen never actually happen, but we've just made it up in our heads.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just mindfulness is practicing that. But yeah, I just want to, I suppose the second part of your question of like, how did I do it? Well, the hypnotherapy was a massive catalyst for it. The meditation, mindfulness, and yoga is what keeps me going with it. It makes me fearless. It makes me not suffer with panic attacks. It makes my breath work, my breathing regulated and calm. If I am scared of something, I will go and meditate. Or if I am scared, I am then mindfully aware in the present moment of how my body is reacting. So I know something's made me uncomfortable before it allows me to take over my body. So then I can think, something here has made you not feel happy. What is it before you react? But I must say, I don't always get it right. So I'm not sat here saying, I went on this journey and now I'm perfect. I'm far from it. And as is anybody who practices this stuff, it is a forever journey. And it's not, hearing all this, you might think, well, how on earth do I achieve that? I mean, that's years of work. And, it was such a catalyst for her that I'm never going to get there. But actually, you will. And it's just like, to me, it almost seems like not a big deal when I say it, because I'm just like, it doesn't need to be like this big deal or this big kind of thing that in your head you think, oh my god, it's gonna take me ages to get there, or how do I do it? You can do it today. Start practicing it today. It doesn't need, you've heard my story, you think, oh god, how am I going to do that? But you don't need to also have had something happen or a catalyst, and you don't need to do it daily. I don't do it daily. That's not because I want to not do it daily. It's because I'm human and I fail at stuff all the time, but it's not failing. So you've got to be clear on that as well. Never see it as a failure. I use that term because a lot of people associate with it. It's just, you just got to kind of give it a go, and not be afraid of getting it wrong. So if you don't meditate for a week, which I often don't do, and I shouldn't do that, but then don't use the word shouldn't or I failed, or be kind to yourself, and just start again. It's not a be all and end all. You just keep trying. I said I'll have weeks where I'm meditating, I'm really zen in how I respond to things. I have other weeks where my business partners must just think, Jesus, this is not who I went into business with, and that's okay. At least I admit it. I think that's it. I think obviously if anyone had any questions, like, I'd love for people to get in contact with me and chat to me about it. There's so much more I can always say, and I'm sure when I listen to things, I'll say, oh, I know I should have said this, I could have said this to help you. So please, always people reach out, and I'd be more than happy to help.
And when can they book onto your next retreat, the next BusyBuddha Retreat, Anastasia?
Yes, the next one's actually in March next year.
However, it's nearly sold out.
Yeah.
So
yes. There's
me
only
and
2 rooms left.
Me and Paul really think we need to do another one, because the world they need Anastasia in their lives. So listeners, if you agree, feel free to reach out and say, yes, please put on another retreat.
I mean, to be fair, enough you do that, it will make me do it. The next one is next year, and we can usually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's like 6 rooms, and we've only now got 2 rooms left already, which for me is amazing. Like, all my hopes and dreams come true. Like, I can't do this without you guys. Like, it's all well and good saying, look at what you do, Anastasia, but it wouldn't exist without you. So, you've made my dreams come true, and me believe in myself by booking onto these retreats. But it also shows that people are starting to understand it. Times are starting to change. You've got people in the legal industry like me, and so many other people I know who their trainees won't experience the same thing. The partners will recognize that actually, let's send our staff on these mindfulness retreats. If our staff need a day off to go and do some yoga, you go do that. We can't pour from an empty cup. And one of the things we do say at the Busy Buddha is about your oxygen mask. You might have heard this. It's the analogy. So when you're on a flight, okay, so your air hostess stands up and she goes, in the event of an emergency and the air mask dropped down from above you, before you help anybody else, fit your own oxygen mask first. Now think about that for a minute. There's a reason why she's saying that. If you try and fit someone else's mask before your own, you will pass out and die. You have to help yourself before you can help others. Now, that's one of the biggest lessons I learned, that I constantly was trying to give and help other people and succeed and be there for my family and be there for my friends and fix people. But all the while, I was just diminishing myself, and I was just not being able to help them actually from a position where I was able to give. It was exhausting me. So they were never going to get the best version of me. Whereas now I would say to my business partners, Actually, I'm finishing today because I'm going to go do yoga. They know not to put meetings in when I've got yoga because they understand that I've got to look after myself if they want us firing on all cylinders. My partner knows. If he said to me, can you do this evening with me? I would just say, no, I need to go and do this. I need to go meditate. And he'd understand it. But it took me a long while to also have that confidence to think people aren't going to look at me like I'm either selfish or that I've lost my mind by going to meditate in a field somewhere, which, by the way, I don't do that. I meditate in an office. You can meditate anywhere. Yeah, so I just think it's about understanding that you must look after yourself, your nervous system, your body, your mind, to be the best version of you and to help others around you.
Yes, it's not selfish, it's self-care.
Yeah, that's the one.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. You are just absolute light and wisdom. So grateful to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I love doing this. Like with Ella, I've had like a couple of opportunities recently to tell my story, and that's also another piece of my puzzle. So thank you so much for letting me do that.
Thank you for listening. You can connect to us and our guests via the links in each episode's show notes. Before you go, we invite you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the goodness to come. And if you enjoyed today, perhaps tell a friend to tell a friend. We are always grateful for you, our listeners, for our fabulous guests, and to everyone who has contributed to and been a part of our journey here.
Our music is by Tomo Carter. Everything else is brought to you by us, the PowerUp Power Team.
I'm Ella Mesma.
I am Amma Rouge. And we are PowerUp Podcast.